section, the methodological challenges posed by evidence, and the nature of understanding and explanation for the subject under consideration. This book examines these differences in historical epistemology, theory, and methods in order to provide a foundation for a meaningful dialogue about the incorporation of history into the study of organizations. This introduction contextualizes the chapters that follow within these broader epistemic, theoretical, and methodological considerations. As we show, the growing interest in the incorporation of the past into organization studies has created an opportunity for a historic turn, following a period when history was largely marginalized by the experimental science-inspired aspirations of organization studies. However, we point out that the barriers to such a historic turn remain significant and include the limited dialogue between organization scholars and historians over the nature of historical reasoning and its relevance to organizations, the opacity of historical methods, and the separation of organization scholars and business historians into distinct intellectual communities. The first section traces the development of interest in historical approaches to management and organization studies, and explains why we think this is an opportune moment for a deeper dialogue between management scholars and business historians about the nature and value of historical methods. The second section examines the challenges posed by the epistemological differences between historical reasoning and management science, and considers how organizational research can still effectively incorporate history given these differences. The third section demonstrates how historical reasoning offers unique insights into the choices and behavior of entrepreneurs, managers, organizations, and markets, which the more functional social sciences often miss. The fourth section discusses issues of methodology and proposes solutions to problems of evidence, analysis, and interpretation that arise concurrently with the insights of historical approaches. The conclusion examines a number of practical considerations and challenges involved in more fully incorporating history into management and organization studies. Origins of the historic turn. Like the organizations we study, the historic turn has had its own history. That history provides a useful perspective on the prospects and challenges of incorporating historical reasoning into organizational research. In their examination of the role of historical reasoning in organization studies over the course of the 20th century, Wadhwani and Kipping show that recent efforts to integrate historical research into organization studies are not entirely new. Indeed, history was an integral element of what eventually became foundational works on organizations and institutions, including Weber, Bendix, Selznick, Smelser, Stinchcomb, and Chandler. Moreover, throughout the early and mid-20th century, history was part of the streams of research and teaching that would later come to be identified as organizational studies, especially in the United States. Wadhwani and Kipping show that it was not until the 1950s and 1960s, when organization studies embraced the identity of a particular form of inquiry inspired by the laboratory sciences, that history became increasingly marginal. As happened in other social science fields, organization studies gradually gravitated towards a form of science that emphasized general theory, propositional claims, and the separation and testing of independent and dependent variables as ends in themselves. History in this context seemed less and less relevant to knowledge formation. Paradoxically, the foundations for the eventual re-emergence of history at the turn of the century were laid during the height of organization studies' scientific aspirations. In particular, organizational theories that sought to provide longitudinal perspectives on organizational phenomena raised questions about time and process that led scholars back into an engagement with the past. Organization ecology and institutional theory, for instance, integrated temporal dynamics into research that relied on historical data to test assertions in remote time periods. Likewise, evolutionary theory, process research, and, to a degree, transaction cost economics seemed open to questions of temporality. Over time, these theories have led many organization scholars into deeper encounters with longitudinal data, historical settings, and archival sources.